Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The Parliamentary Commission investigating value-added tax fraud adopted its final report today. However, members of the Commission from the opposition parties said that that was not in fact the case. Alexandra Zajicka has more on the report's conclusions.
The Commission accepted the final report, although not unanimously, as the members of the Commission from the Civic Platform, Modern and Polish People's Party voted against it. In the report, the Commission sustained its previous recommendation to put 4 people in front of the State Tribunal, 2 former PMs from the Civic Platform Party, Ewa Kopacz and Donald Tusk, as well as 2 former Ministers of Finance. The chairman of the Commission, Marcin Horała, thanked the other members for their work and called it a great success.
Interesu ekonomicznego państwa.
Nieprawidłowości, które były w zakresie egzekwowania.
The malpractices and discrepancies in the executing of VAT were happening on a huge scale during these 8 years. The VAT gap was around 250–260 billion zloty, which is simply an incomprehensibly large amount of money for ordinary citizens. Then there is also the case of seeing what a twisted reality it was, when an example in 2013 the gap was more than 4 billion zloty, which was the state budget for the Ministry of Health that year. In 1 year we lost more than we paid for the Ministry of Health.
W jednym roku traciliśmy na więcej niż cały budżet Ministerstwa Zdrowia.
Cała ta praca i raport pokazuje.
The work of this commission shows that there are great challenges ahead of the State Treasury Administration and the Ministry of Finance, never to allow this to happen again. The state cannot lose to criminals.
Że z państwem mogą wygrywać przestępcy.
The commission ended its work. This was its last sitting. We adopted the final report with a few minor adjustments, but its main conclusions were that there were many discrepancies, cases of extortion, fraud and other malpractices which led to the depletion of the state treasury. The Commission believes this type of action is in violation of the Constitution, and on this basis we recommend to put those responsible in front of the State Tribunal, that is 2 former Prime Ministers and 2 former Ministers of Finance.
Powinien skutkować postawieniem przed Trybunałem Stanu osób odpowiedzialnych.
Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, the leader of the Polish People's Party, today presented the leaders of the regional electoral lists drawn up with the Liberals of the Polish coalition for next month's parliamentary elections. In the view of many political commentators, these elections will decide the fate of the Polish People's Party, support for which opinion polls have balanced on the 5% threshold necessary for election to Parliament.
We're not running against someone in these elections. We're running to bring back unity in society, to make things normal again. We're running to bring back respect for all people and their dignity, respect for employees and their work, and to bring back mutual cooperation between Poles. Our country can truly be great, but for this to happen, we need to choose great people. You can't choose bad people and expect them to do good. We need to choose responsible, smart people who have their own views and know how to defend them, and who are capable of doing something different, going against the current. People who believe that what we do in our social and political lives is worth the effort.
30 deaths and immense damage to property. This is the initial assessment after Hurricane Dorian struck the northern Bahamas. The hurricane, which has already lost a significant amount of its force, is now heading towards the coast of South Carolina.
Hurricane Dorian struck the hardest in the Bahamas, where it lingered for over a day beginning on Sunday. Constant wind speeds exceeded 290 km per hour, reaching as high as 350. Storm waves reached over 7 meters high. The force of nature caused monstrous floods. Around 13,000 homes were either damaged or destroyed entirely. People are still being searched for a couple days after the hurricane struck. The Bahamian Prime Minister, Hubert Minnis, said that Dorian did not only cause huge material losses on the archipelago, but also caused trauma among their people.
Some homes, businesses and other buildings and infrastructure were badly damaged. There are a significant number of people in shelters. Then one review from the east, coming central.
Dante Cara, a Reuters photographer, observed the hurricane's attack from the window of his room. Unfortunately, he had to find shelter elsewhere.
Hi everybody, Dante Greer here in Marsh Harbour. Just went through, we're just in the eye of Category 5 Hurricane Dorian. I had to leave my room, and yeah, it's pretty bad. We're now going into a common area. Hopefully that'll be safer. I'm just going to show you, around a little bit. Part of the roof's gone. But anyway, everyone's safe, so that's something.
Currently, the hurricane is moving north along the eastern coast of the United States. According to the meteorologists, on Sunday it is going to bounce off the American continent and move towards the northern Atlantic after becoming a very active low-pressure air vortex.
In an emotional game, Polish basketball players defeated a strong Russian team 79-74 in the second round of the World Cup. The Polish team tipped the scales of victory in its favour at the end of the match. Polish basketball players, who are playing in the World Championships for the first time in 52 years, are the surprise of the tournament and have already secured their place in the quarter-finals. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.
Hello, and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. The forecast for tonight will bring rain to most of the regions of the country. We can expect to see cloudy skies in Koszalin, Zielona Góra and Wrocław, and partly cloudy skies in Szczecin. The temperatures should vary between 9 to 14 degrees centigrade. Tomorrow, the cities of Olsztyn, Łódź, Wrocław and Katowice will see rain, while Gdańsk can expect partly cloudy skies. The rest of the country will see cloudy skies. The day should be fairly warm, with a temperature varying between 16 to 22 degrees. That is all for now. I invite you to join us later on for Poland Daily Business.
Sir, first of all, welcome to the show. Welcome to this Krynica event. I hope this will be very fruitful for you. But let us start from the position of Hungary. How do you see the international position of your country right now?
Look, I can tell you that after the European Parliament elections, there has been a growing respect towards Hungary, and I guess that was the same towards Poland, because public support matters still in Europe as well. And the Hungarian and the Polish ruling parties have reached outstanding results and have reached outstanding public support in the European Parliament elections. Obviously, we have very tough debates about the future of the European Union, which is, natural, because there are real challenges ahead of the European Union, and if there are real challenges, and if you are looking for real answers, then you definitely have real debates. So I don't think that would be bad news that we do have debates. The problem is that these debates go against the practical and common sense approach many times. They become emotional. And if a debate becomes emotional, then it gets to stigmatization and accusations and fake news immediately. But, we will definitely take part in these debates in the future as well, with the same strength as we have been doing that so far.
The topics that Poland and Hungary are being accused, mutually or simultaneously by the European left, are, first of all, the immigration policy, then sometimes the ecology, and they call it rule of law. So let's start from this immigration policy. First of all, why do you think that Western Europe is doing it? It's sort of allowing pretty much everyone to land on Europe, giving them some stipend, giving them some funds, and not using the Schengen agreement, not using the embassies, the stipendial system, visa system, whatever.
Look, there are two basic approaches confronting each other when it comes to the future of European Union. One can be summarized by the expression United States of Europe, and the other one, which we Polish and Hungarian represent and the Central Europeans support, is the strong European Union based on strong member states. Now, in order to create a United States of Europe, you have to make your nations getting rid of their national identity, getting rid of and getting far away from their historic, religious, cultural heritage, and in order to do so, you need to bring in people in a big number from different culture. And I think this is one of the explanations why Brussels, why some Western European countries are pushing for more and more illegal migrants to arrive to the territory of the European Union, absolutely leaving out of consideration the security aspect of this whole phenomenon, absolutely leaving out of consideration the fact that the threat of terror has been growing since they have been making this stupid policy of theirs.
So what you are saying is that the aim is to get rid of the nations of Poland, Hungary, Czech, Slovaks, but rather make it territory when there are inhabitants of those areas who came from different parts of the world.
Yeah, I think this is the major debate currently in EU, because we Central Europeans share a vision that we must stick to our national identity, we must stick to our religious and cultural heritage. That's why we speak openly about the fact that we want leaders who stop migration, we want leaders who are ready to give priority to Christian culture, we want leaders who do want to stick to national identity and not to get rid of it. So this is the major debate currently. And of course, since we are representing an anti-mainstream position in this regard, since we are stepping up against migration in a very determined and very loud and spectacular, and by the way, successful way, that's why Brussels, the European institutions, some big Western European EU member states are willing to make revenge on us. And one of the form of this revenge is the so-called Article 7 procedure, which has been going on simultaneously against, what a surprise, Poland and Hungary.
But with new parliament and new commission, this argument is ceased, right? Or you assume that they will continue this pressure?
Look, what we know is the following. The president of the new European Commission has so far shown respect towards the Central European countries. In case of the current Commission and in case of the president and especially the first vice president of the current European Commission, this respect has never been there. And I think this is a game changer. Because we're gonna have debates for sure in the future as well. And I really do think that the game changer is whether we can keep these debates on the basis of mutual respect, or these debates will go immediately into accusation, emotional, fake news, whatever, like they have been doing now. So I hope that there will be an improvement in this regard. Look, you have a strong representation. I mean, your ruling party has a strong representation in the European Parliament. We do have a strong representation in the European Parliament, and we definitely have to use it in the future.
But the Hungarians are not going to join the EPP, the party, or the fraction in the European Parliament that Law and Justice has its members.
Look, we are now part of EPP, and it only depends.
I mean, EKR,
ECR,
Conservatives and Reformers.
You know, currently we are an EPP member party. We are the most successful party of EPP based on election results, and that must not be left out of consideration. So we, Fidesz, are ready to take part in the debate about the future of EPP and to take part in the debate about the vision and the way of thinking for the future in EPP. Look, there are definitely, and we would like to influence this debate in a way that EPP should not open more to the left, but should open more to the right, and should work together with those successful parties which base their policies on protecting national interests. Now, this is a big debate in EPP, and our membership will depend on which direction this debate will be decided.
If you look at the strongest country of the European Union, the Germany, and with the election that are in the lands, the recent election in Saxony, what conclusion would you like to draw out of it?
Well, actually, I think that the conclusions should be drawn by the Germans. So we are lucky enough that we don't have to draw conclusions from those elections. We can draw conclusions from our own elections, and I think this should be kept how it should be going on. What I know is that whenever experts speak about the future competitiveness and the future shape of the European Union, they usually speak about the importance of the German-French cooperation. Now, what the figures show is totally different, because the trade, meaning economic connection, between the V4 countries and Germany has been 74% higher last year than the German-French trade, meaning that for us, Central Europeans, it really matters what happens in Germany, and for us, Central Europeans, the strength of Germany is important. That's why the economic and political cooperation is important as well. And the conclusions to be drawn should be left to them.
Okay, we expect Germans to appreciate this trade. What about Russia, another big country that is east of the Central Europe? Do you think that there is any positive role that Russia can play in the European politics while under the leadership of Vladimir Putin?
Look, what I see here is the following, that there's a very, very big hypocrisy in Europe when it comes to discussion about Russia and discussion about the cooperation or relationship to Russia. Because those, especially Western Europeans, who argue against the Russians in the loudest way, they make the biggest businesses with the Russians under the surface. Look, we are all Central European nations. We know the lessons of history. Whenever there was a conflict between East and West, we Central Europeans always lost. Regardless of the outcome of the big conflict, we always lost. And this is something that should be avoided in the future. So when we argue in favor of a more pragmatic dialogue between East and West, this is not done by us just because, we would be spies of any of these. This is because this is dictated by our national security interests. So what we hope for is that a dialogue between European Union and Russia will be based on the trust and on the respect towards international law in the future.
Okay. Do you think that the Putin's regime will stay in power in Russia for another 20 years? Or?
Look, since I'm not a Russian, it doesn't matter what I think about that. We should leave it to the Russian people to decide about that.
Only a few days ago in Warsaw, there was quite a big event, including Mr. Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, and the political analysts who saw this are speaking about division in the world. This American-Chinese partnership that lasted for the last 30 years is breaking apart. Americans are sort of fed up and want to regain their leading position. By the way, America is going to be #1 exporter of the energy resources. That means hundreds of billions of dollars to the American budget. There is also very tough talk about defense, like Poland is one of the countries that fulfill this 2% for a NATO, which we consider very important. What is and obviously in this is also the big Russia that has to decide, are you Russians with Chinese or are you with us, with the West? How do you look at this? Why Mr. Donald Trump and Mike Pence are drawing this division?
Look, I think we have to understand that, that the global economy has been undergoing quick, profound and significant changes. And obviously, it's going into a direction which can be described something like a bipolar world in this regard. USA being the leader in the West, and then we have the Chinese and the allies and the countries around China. So this is how it looks now from trade and economic perspective. Once again, for us, for a country which has a very open economy like ours, our export over GDP ratio is 86.5%. We are absolutely not interested in any kind of trade war, because if there's a trade war taking place, it means that there are restrictions, customs, obstacles, and for countries like ours, it's very dangerous from economic perspective.
By the way, what is the trade balance of Hungary with China?
Well, actually, we make around $2.5 billion of exports and around $7 billion of imports. So obviously, it's negative. But whatever we import from China, many things will be re-exported after giving added value. So it's not black and white to this very simple meaning. And cooperation with China is more than trade, because Chinese companies represent a high level of modernity. We cannot deny that. And maybe this is one of the reasons why Chinese companies are becoming more and more competitive. And we should not forget that the Chinese companies have been buying a lot of companies in the western part of Europe. So in our case, we have 16 major Chinese companies present in Hungary, but 11 of them are outcomes of global takeovers of Western European or North American companies. So we should not forget about that either, that while there is a political type of, let's say, dispute between the Chinese and the Americans based on trade, they have enormously strong trade connections and trade cooperation. And once again, for a small country, small economy, but very open one, trade wars are bad news.
Okay. The discussion is about the next generation of mobile phones, G5. Is Hungary deciding towards the Chinese solution, or you would prefer us, Poland?
We have not decided, because it's not us to decide, because this is a private market. So in Hungary, Huawei has a strong role in building the 5G infrastructure. But it's important to see behind the curtain and see why. Why? Because the two biggest providers in Hungary have contracted them to build the infrastructure for them. Now, which are these two companies? Deutsche Telekom from Germany and Vodafone from UK. So two big Western European mobile providers contracted the Chinese Huawei to build the 5G infrastructure. So whenever Western European colleagues of ours, or even colleagues from Washington, talk to us about the dangers of Huawei, I usually tell them, look, talk to your own companies, convince them, and then we can speak again about this issue.
A few years ago, the huge uproar in our countries was by the unequal standards of products being sold in our countries. Even people who pointed to that went to the accusation of the economical colonialism by the countries of Western Europe. First of all, is it the case? Second of all, do you think we should fight back or protect ourselves?
Well, I still see some socialistic type of approach by the Western European economic policy plans, to be honest. So it's a kind of funny, let's put it this way, between quotation marks, that the economic policy proposals put forward by the Western Europe, some of the Western European countries are now socialistic, you know, and we represent the market. So market-based policies. So what I feel here is that now it's not about the products of the, not about the quality of the products, but about tax and the state debts. The Western Europeans look at our low tax rates as something they have to fight against in bureaucratic ways. That's why they are pushing for tax harmonization, which would definitely put risks on our national economies, because we should raise taxes in that case. That's why we have to go against that. That's why we have to reject it. That's why we have to veto everything what would bring to tax harmonization. And when it comes to communizing debts, countries who have been very disciplined when it comes to fiscal and financial issues, we have to fight against that as well, because communization of the debts would mean spreading the outcomes and consequences of irresponsible policies all over, and we should not let that happen.
That's a euro that is made for that, and neither Poland nor Hungary wants to join the euro so far.
Well, I think there should be two very important preconditions to be fulfilled in order euro to be introduced in any country. Number one, that given country must be totally ready, and the second, that the eurozone must be totally ready as well.
Okay, Péter Szijjártó, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary.
Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily Business Weather. The forecast for tomorrow will bring rain to Łódź, Wrocław and Katowice. Gdańsk can expect to see partly cloudy skies, while the rest of the country will see cloudy skies. The temperatures should vary from 16 to 22 degrees centigrade. In Europe, most of the continent will see rain. The Iberian Peninsula, the UK, Greece and the eastern parts of Europe can expect to see partly cloudy skies. The temperatures should vary from 11 to 32 degrees centigrade. That is all for tonight. I thank you for joining us, and I wish you all a very pleasant evening.
Good day, everyone. My name is Maria Kądzielska, and this is Poland Daily Culture. Today in studio we have a very original band. He's Polish and she's Chinese, and they make music together. Ladies and gentlemen, Pomponika.
Hello.
Hello. Łucja and Piotr, thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation.
But before we listen to their story, let's hear them play.
All the tears are drying in the air in such weird hot summer day. The way you handle it is out of control. Nobody dared to say a word. Violence was born from the consciousness far beyond we could realize. Deep inside you prefer to use a fist, cause it saves time for both of us. Shameless, you say, in the crowded street. Everyone pretends not to look. Pointless, you claim, in the sharing moment, since when all the dreams are wrong. Nonsense, you left, now let me show you side. Who or what am I gonna be? Bullshit. That's a final answer for everything we're gonna argue with.
Before we learn more about your music, let's gossip for a few minutes. Polish-Chinese couples are rare. How did you both meet?
Well, we met in a beautiful place close to Warsaw. There is a Radziwice Palace, and we organize workshops for composers. And we invite some Chinese groups from Sichuan, and that's how we met.
So you went to we went from Sichuan to Poland?
Yes, I was a participant of this workshop back to 2015, I guess.
2015?
Yes.
And you just saw Piotr and you decided, this is my Polish man?
Kind of.
Well, you know, it's a summer, beautiful place, great relaxing atmosphere. So it's how it works, I guess.
What is the common background between both of you? Because you combine two continents. Was it music, the thing which put you both together?
I think in the first place, I wouldn't say it's music. I would say it's more about the way of thinking, how to spend your life. So we talk a lot in the first place when we met.
Yes. I was kind of amazed because I thought, I never really thought I will have Chinese girlfriend or wife, yes? I would think it's a completely different world, but actually when we met, I cannot see any difference. So that's a funny thing, funny fact.
So in fact, we Polish and Chinese people have lots of things in common, yes?
I think so. I mean, we are all individuals, so I think there are many different people in Poland and many different people in China. Well, I visited China once. I spent there 1 month, and I've seen many differences, but like between us, as an individual, I think we are very similar.
So which language do you speak at home together?
Mostly English, because it's easy.
Yes, it's easy, but you know, when couple talks, they have their own words. So I think if English people can hear us, they will laugh, I think. So we mixed, sometimes we mixed Polish and English, sometimes you add some Chinese words.
So, and which Chinese words do you put? Which are the most common, which you have in your dictionary?
I think you speak the thank you the most, yes?
Yes, 谢谢.
谢谢.
So sometimes we talk and suddenly I say 谢谢. I actually, I don't speak Chinese nearly at all. I know just a few words like dumplings.
Which are? Give us them.
我爱包子. that means I love dumplings. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. So that's the only thing I can say in Chinese. But usually that makes Chinese people, laugh a lot when I talk it. And that's the funny story because Wuxia stocks arrived this year to us, and they cannot speak Polish. So we have communication problems because with Wuxia I can speak English, but with the dogs it's very difficult. So
you have to talk.
I have to learn now Chinese really because of the dogs.
Okay, very funny. And Wuxia, how do you feel in Poland? Because you needed to move here for him, as I understand. Was it a hard decision?
I mean, for me, I feel very calm and happy here. Because back to my city in Chengdu, there's quite a big city. There's a lot of people. So when I came here, I feel, oh, it's much less people and much less noise on the street. And in Warsaw, you have many lovely parks. I think that's very, very, very important for me because when I was walking in those parks, I feel like I'm living in the postcards, like what I've seen when I was a child.
So you feel much calmer here. Is it also a better place to work on your music?
I think so. When the first year when I moved here, I even write a song about me in Warsaw. So because I feel very relaxing and very chill out every day.
To be the Chinese kid, just to nod my head. Don't speak too much and don't be fat. Eat every food the local recommend. Use fake love when I don't understand.
Could you tell us more about the role of a musician in China?
As a musician in China?
Yes. Is it the same as in Poland?
No, I think it's very different because, we have mega population in China, so which make all the situation very different. If you're a musician in China, no matter what kind of musician, I would say it's much easier to make a living because there's different platforms for you. And nowadays in China, people tend to watch like the TikTok or the channel, the streamers. So if you just download any of that, you can see like thousands, millions of the musicians performing there. And also we have many different music festivals. So if you want to have a show or somewhere, you can also find a place.
So it's actually a little bit easier than in Poland.
I would say it's different. I wouldn't call it easy.
Okay, but it's like there are more platforms and more audience,
yes,
for sure. But as I understand, more musicians as well.
Yes, so it's the same.
Yeah, and how did you start your music life?
You mean back to China? I was dreaming about to learn piano when I was a kid. But we are kind of financially poor, so we cannot afford it. So finally, when I was 15, we got a chance, and I can start to learn piano and other like vocal training things. Then I trained for like 3 or 4 years, and I entered the University of the Music. Then after that one, we feel like maybe vocal is not ready for me. Then I turned my major to the composition more. So that's how it develops. And at the end of the composition study, and I came here for this Péter workshop.
And tell me about Chinese aesthetics. What kind of music in China people like? What is the most popular? Is it different in Poland?
I think it's different because if you're talking about the aesthetic things, it's always connected with history factors, yes, and also the regions of the country. And China is made of many different regions. And if we are talking about the minority regions, which I was so fascinated by their music and culture, because most of their culture and their spirit is very passionate and open, and they will make their music and their ceremony, their dancing very passionate, and they use the word very straight, very powerful. So for the minority culture, I think it's very nice. And for our majority region, because of the history reason, I think our culture has to be cut for like decades. So we stopped developing our culture for decades. And nowadays, I believe people tend to rebuild those things again. So if you're talking about young people nowadays, I think they are more into to find themselves. Like they are more merging to the Japanese or Korean culture or the American or hip-hop cultures and the street cultures much more. And for like our parents' generation, and now they start to believe, okay, they are confident and safe to built their elegance and beauty again. So it's different.
To sum up, Chinese culture is reflourishing again and created again the majority culture.
I believe so.
And ladies and gentlemen, it is also an encouragement for you to learn more about modern Chinese culture. And thank you for watching Poland Daily Culture.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are discussing the events of World War II and the consequences for the Polish nation. We are in the Ochota district of Warsaw, right in front of the monument dedicated to the soldiers who held up the Germans for 19 days on September 1939. The historian, Dr. Krzysztof Jabłonka, will guide us through this turbulent time in Polish history. Continuing on the discussion of the Second World War, in the earlier episodes we've been talking about the earlier phases of the war, and now I was hoping we can get into the turning point where the Soviets won the Battle of Stalingrad and how did that shift the entire war.
Dopóki Związek Sowiecki znajdował się w opałach i ginął w oczach, Polaków niemal noszono na rękach, przepraszano ich.
As long as the Soviet Union was in trouble and was withering away, Poles were almost carried in the hands of other countries. They were apologized to and efforts were made to satisfy all Polish needs without creating excessive, though not complete, obstacles. At the time when the Polish army left the territory of the Soviet Union and there was a breakthrough at Stalingrad, and on February 2nd, 1943, the German army finally capitulated, and since then it has been systematically pushed west. The attitude towards Poles changed radically. The Soviet Union basically declared war on Poles, but they simply forgot to tell Poles about it. Poles figured out what was going on by themselves. Just a few days after the defeat of Germany, the Soviet partisans met with the Ukrainian partisans in Volhynia and persuaded them to attack Poles. This was the Volyn slaughter, which swept from the east to west from February 9th to December 1943. The evidence for this argument is the fact that no Pole was killed from the pre-war border who could have been considered by the Soviets to be a Bolshevik Pole. The second, very important thing was the discovery of the Katyn massacre, which the Germans publicized and which the Soviets immediately denied. When the Poles turned to the International Red Cross in Geneva, the Soviet Union treated it as casus belli and broke off diplomatic relations, which in the Soviet language meant a war with Poles. Finally, the third moment, the entry of Soviet troops into the territory of the former Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the almost immediate fight with the Polish guerrilla. The Poles were disarmed, or even like Kmicic, shot by Soviet partisans. From then on, terrified Poles had to fight both armies. The Soviets pretended to be friends, they invited the Poles to parties, vodka was poured, after which the Poles were arrested and taken deep into Russia to the camps. They were treated as Hitler's allies. Anyway, Soviet propaganda tried hard to do what Poles did not succeed to do. Hitler's allies, and in extreme cases Polish partisans who were exported to the east, who fought hard for 4 years with Germans, were disguised in German uniforms so that the local people were convinced that they were freshly delivered Germans. At an extreme moment in the NKVD camp in Jagiellowo, an agreement was reached between Polish, German and Russian prisoners there, and a joint hunger strike was carried out which forced the NKVD authorities to treat the prisoners better. Ultimately, the Poles, joining the Wisła and Storm actions, tried to free themselves at the critical moment as much of Poland as possible to be able to welcome the Russians as allies. In any case, the Russians turned out to be occupiers. An extreme example of such an action, at the culmination of the Storm action, was the Warsaw Uprising, which was to finally tear the mask off Stalin's face. Is he an ally of Western powers, or is he an ally of Hitler? At this point, Stalin hesitated, Until August 1st, 1944, all Soviet radio stations were constantly urging, "People of Warsaw, take up arms. The Red Army is going to help you," calling for an uprising. It was a spontaneous uprising that would dispel any doubts from the underground state. The Poles retained discipline and joined the fight on the order given by the head of the Polish underground army. Unfortunately, at this point, Stalin took offense at Poles. He decided to leave them alone. The worst situations occurred during the war, when the Soviet troops occupying part of Prague from the momentum over the broken bridges began to cross over to the insurgents. The NKVD troops shot them in the backs, killing one of the commanders, Michał Wiśniewski, on the Kierbeć bridge. His comrades in arms, when they reached his wife and father's wife, simply stated, "Our people shot us in our backs," which was a rare occurrence during the war. Finally, the last thing, the uprising collapsed. It was terribly bloody. After the uprising, 80% of the city's material condition was destroyed. That was houses, palaces, everything we had. Only the channels were fairly maintained. The Soviets did not bat an eye. We paid a terrible price. We paid with our capital and almost 150,000 people killed. But the effect was equally valuable, since the Bolsheviks have since betrayed themselves as future opponents of Western countries. General Eisenhower simply said, "I understood that the next enemy would be Russia, and I did not allow to disarm the US Army." And the second thing, the uprising stopped the front for half a year. The Russians were late to Berlin. They arrived there in May. By this time, US troops had already occupied the only nuclear center in German Thuringia that the Germans had, and evacuated everything that could help the Soviets in building the bomb. They were 4 years late and lost the Cold War with the United States for 4 years, saving Europe from war.
I o te 4 lata przegrali zimną wojnę ze Stanami Zjednoczonymi, ocalając Europę od wojny.
After the fall of the Warsaw Uprising, the Western Allies retracted their support for the Polish government in exile. And I was wondering if you can tell me what events transpired after that.
Powstanie warszawskie było szokiem dla wszystkich wojujących stron.
The Warsaw Uprising was a shock to all participants of the war. The Soviets were terrified by such a long resistance that revealed their negative attitude towards Poles. The Germans were delighted with Polish resistance. They saluted when Poles surrendered, and those who surrendered to Germany did not get hurt until the end of the war. Finally, the British and Americans were also shocked, trying to help Poland with the September 18th discharge of 100 and several dozen American machines in Warsaw.
Niestety zbyt wysoko te maszyny leciały i cały ten transport amunicji, żywności.
Unfortunately, these machines flew too high, and all this transport of ammunition and food was carried by the wind to the German side. Nevertheless, from now on, Poles had a basic argument. How do they defend themselves against the possibility of another occupation? The Bolsheviks created a situation in which they were seen as liberators of the Polish lands. Yes, the Soviet army was most welcomed by Poles as a liberation army, but the same Soviet soldiers, whilst fraternizing with the Poles, said, "Take care, the NKVD is following us. You only have 3 days of freedom." We are forever grateful to all these soldiers for these 3 days. Their cemeteries on our land will be safe. But it was only 3 days. Later, there was a very heavy occupation, Sovietization and communism in Poland. At first, the Western states were powerlessly giving away the eastern lands to Stalin. It was decided to restore the border called the False Curzon Line, rigged by the British diplomat Neymar, who was originally called Namierowski, a Pole of Jewish origin. According to this line, both Vilnius, Grodno and Lviv were to be in the Soviet Union. When the talks concerning this border took place in Yalta, it was presented as a British line, and it was difficult for Churchill to disagree with his predecessor's offer Warsaw at the office of Prime Minister. The British accepted the cutting off of eastern Poland and Yalta. This happened in Tehran in 1943. In February 1945, native Polish lands were handed over to Yalta under Bolshevik rule. We were sold. It wasn't until Potsdam that Poles at least got compensation in the so-called Eastern Territories, where the border was marked only strategically on the Nysa and Odra. The same border which the Germans gave as a Polish border in the Gliwice provocation that was drawn by the Germans, and the Allies carried it out. Finally, on August 5, 1945, Great Britain, France and the United States withdrew recognition of the Polish government in exile. From then on, the Polish government existed only in secret, although it was not forbidden to function. There was a president in exile, and after the death of President Raczkiewicz, his successor was automatically appointed, who appointed a successor after his death, after which 7-year terms took place, and the last president of the Polish government was appointed. The protected insignia, flag, book and seal were brought and handed over to the first president of independent Poland, Lech Wałęsa, upon the general election. Polish continuity was maintained. The Second Republic gave birth to the Third Republic.
Została utrzymana. Druga Rzeczpospolita zrodziła Trzecią Rzeczpospolitą.
As we have seen today, the Second World War had devastating consequences for Poland. Despite the country's best effort to fend off the German aggressors, Poland was occupied first by the Germans and then the Soviet Union until 1989. That's it for today. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello and welcome. It's time for another series of episodes in Poland Daily Travel. What's better to do on a bright, sunny summer's day than light out for the country? And that's just what we did. There are so many interesting and cool places near Warsaw to go and see. That makes a day trip full of adventure and surprises. We went west, first to Ożarów Mazowiecki, then cross-country. Nearby Sochaczew was the scene of the Battle of Bzura River in September 1939. The last Polish cavalry charge defeated German infantry. There's a museum and the ruins of the castle of the Dukes of Mazovia. Another cross-country jaunt and we come to Brochów on the Bzura River. There's a beautiful church with the design of a castle. Chopin's parents married here at the turn of the 19th century. So it's westward ho from Warsaw for Poland Daily Travel. Stay with us and sit back and enjoy the ride. Poland Daily Travel, your favorite travel programming about Poland.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Poland Daily Travel. We're here in the beautiful town of Sochaczew, about 60, 70 kilometers from Warsaw, and we are walking west and north because this is the way the Bzura River flows, and we are going to go to a very nice place called Brochów, which has an amazing church. Nicholas, it's the church where
Chopin's parents were married.
Correct.
And indeed,
Yes,
I
believe that.
I believe it's also the church where Chopin was baptized.
That's correct. And we might get to see that paper if it's on display. We'll have a look anyway. I don't know if it is. I hear it's sometimes on display. We'll try, see what we can do, even if we only get a picture with our phone, if they won't let us film in there.
Well,
they may say it's too valuable to film.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, you never know. But we certainly see the church, which is an amazing place. I don't want to talk too much about it now.
No, let's see what it's like
because
when
we're
we
going
get
to see it in the next, after the bumper.
After the bumper. It all happened after the bumper.
What day is it today? It's Friday, right?
It is Friday.
Is it a nice place on a Friday afternoon to be right here?
Very peaceful, very...
I'm enjoying it.
It is.
It's beautiful with the, we're just right, the main square is just right over there, about 200 meters, 300 meters.
Over my shoulder.
The who?
River.
The river's right over your shoulder, that's correct.
The castle is over your shoulder.
The castle's over my shoulder. We got it all.
In the Middle Ages, this would be a key piece of real estate.
There's nothing here. There's nothing here at all. Do you think there was one? Do you think villages? Probably the villages were here.
Well, I think the original settlement was
here.
Was round about the castle. Yes.
Yeah, it would have been down in the valley between the river and
exactly.
the
then it
castle.
will have moved as technology improved and as various battles destroyed various things. Then it will have moved.
Because they always had the wooden parts would have been near the.
Exactly.
Would have been started to be built outside.
Exactly right.
The main.
And of course, you'd need in those days. You'd actually need access to the river for water and all sorts of things. So
yeah, otherwise you don't have it. Well, you could dig a well.
Yeah.
You could dig a well.
True.
But why dig a well when you got a beautiful river
exactly.
next door? You know.
And 700 years ago, or whenever the settlement first appeared, you know, that's what you would have done. Gone straight to the river.
Did you know Żelazowa Wola is close by?
Yes,
it's only
about,
2 kilometers,
yeah,
right?
2.5 kilometers.
Which
I've cycled. There was also Chopin's birthplace.
It's where, yeah, he lived the first 6 months or something of his life. Not very long.
But also, since this is a travel show, I have cycled to there from Warsaw.
You have?
Yeah, and there and back it's about 100 kilometers, so what's that? 70 odd miles.
Yeah, I was there on.
Yeah. And it's quite. It's actually
recently.
quite a nice cycle ride as well. You can go in from the north of Warsaw, go, as you'll know, towards Stary Babica. Then you go and you go past.
Stary Babica.
Stary Babica. You go there.
That means an old grandma.
Yes.
I don't know what it means.
Then you wind your way through the countryside. Then you get to a little town of Leszno. And then it's a nice
Leszno's on the edge of the forest.
Yes,
there's a nice Gothic church there.
Exactly. Then you go straight past the church, and then you keep going,
and
you get to the and it's on the same road, and you get to the house and the
so
gardens.
It's just on the extreme southwestern edge
it's a nice,
of the forest.
It's a nice morning. Well, I prefer to go cycling on Loneliness in the morning, but it's a nice morning trip. Go there.
Do you cycle on the street or on
the road? Yeah, there are parts of it are cycle paths. In fact, in Poland, technically, I once got a ticket from the police for cycling on the road when I should have cycled on a cycle path.
Really?
Really. One Sunday morning, in fact, between Leszno and Warsaw, they were waiting to pounce. And I was there and I got stopped. And then some people who were obviously really keen cyclists, so they were in their club cycle kit.
Yeah.
And they were so cross to be stopped by the police. They got into an argument with the police.
Why were they stopped? What were they doing?
Well, because technically in Poland, if there's a cycle
Did they stop
path,
them for wearing silly cycling gear?
No, they stopped them for cycling
you do that
on the
too, don't you?
Yeah,
you
I
wear
do.
silly gear.
It's only
I just wear normal stuff.
Yeah, but
T-shirt.
But if you're cycling a long distance, and particularly in hot weather, it's more comfortable. And it's more practical as well because
if you're doing it every day, like the Tour de France.
No, but I've tried all sorts of things on a bicycle, and honestly, it is the most comfortable way of doing it.
Yeah, okay.
It is true.
I just wear shorts and a T-shirt.
Yeah, but you're American.
And carry one of these. What does that have to do with being an American?
Because
you didn't say that when we came over in 2 wars.
You're not good on
you. You didn't go, you're just Americans here to save us.
You weren't here to save.
That's not good enough.
But you weren't really here to save us. Were you? You were here to take advantage.
I'm still reliving the American Revolution.
Yeah, exactly. So are we.
Poland. Are you really?
Wonder how we could do it better.
That's why I live in Williamsburg, Virginia. Still reliving it, near Jamestown.
Yeah.
We're living our heritage.
We are.
We come from the same place.
We do, really.
We do, yeah. And we live in Poland.
And we live in Poland.
Great. Best
we have the same name.
Best of both worlds. Best of both worlds. Okay. Stay with us, Poland Daily. We're moving on to Brochów. You're going to love this. Stay with us. After the bumper, more excitement. You're going to like this building. It's really interesting. Come on. On the way out of Sochaczew, we couldn't resist stopping by the monument of Chopin.
Yes, indeed.
In the little square here. He lived from 1810 to 1849, 39 years. It's not a long life.
It's not a long life. And not much of it, tragically, was spent in Poland.
A lot of it was spent
in Paris.
In France, yeah. And that's why the French sometimes try to claim him as a French composer.
Well, European countries do that. I mean, the Austrians try to claim Mozart and try to disclaim another of their famous sons.
You mean that guy?
Exactly, that guy.
Yeah, Adolf?
Adolf, yes.
I'll tell you what, The more I hear about him, the less I like him.
Yeah, not a pleasant chap.
Not really. At any rate, we're still on our way to Brochov, but we just thought we'd mention that this is early Chopin country. So somebody who's so important in Polish history and in the music history of the world, it's worth mentioning and emphasizing that he was really from this area. And it's only a couple kilometers away where his house was, and a little further on to the church, which we said before was where his parents were married, and he was baptized. At any rate, anything else you want to say about Chopin other than great tunes?
Great tunes, great pianist.
Yeah, I mean, if he was alive today, he'd be like John Lennon or something. He'd like, not Vladimir, the other guy.
Yeah.
He'd be like a huge rock star. He'd be like Elton John. No, you can never. That's probably the wrong one.
Probably the wrong one. I think the viewers understand what you're trying to say.
What I'm trying to say is he'd be big.
Big? What do
like
you mean?
Michael Bolton.
He was big then.
Michael Bolton? No.
So he'd be even bigger now.
Bigger than Michael Bolton?
Yeah, probably.
I don't know if that's possible to be bigger than Michael Bolton. But at any rate, yes, we are moving on. Stay with us. Poland Daily, we're moving on to the next place. We're going to show you that church. I promise. I'm going to show them to them. Really.
Wait, they're waiting.
I am. I know you're waiting. You're annoying me. Stop it. The whole time.
In your dreams.
I'm going to tell them. I'm going to
tell them. Tell them.
I'm going to tell them how it is. I'm going to tell them what it is, and I'm going to tell them again. How does that go?
But you're not going to tell them where it is.
No, I'm not going to tell them where it is. I'm not going to show them where it is. That's for sure. We don't do that on this show.
We don't.
We don't show people where things are.